everybody hear me? See a lot of new faces tonight, and I see a lot of familiar faces, and I'd like to welcome everybody that hasn't been here before. And say I hope you come back next month, or the month after that. Start off the program with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody, the dues are due. I know I keep saying that, but if you haven't paid your dues, you can pay them to Miss Betty tonight. Vanetta sent out emails and the mail-in, and I think she put stars by the names of the dues that people still owed on, right? Okay, I got it backwards. I'll just turn around and get it right next time. Did everybody get their minutes, either through email or through the U.S. mail? Anybody didn't get their minutes? All right. Anybody got any corrections that need to be added to the minutes?
It is.
All right, I make the motion that the minutes go as stated. Will anybody second it? Second. All right. Everybody agree? Raise your hand, please. All right. Thank you, everybody. Miss Betty, would you do a financial report for us, please?
The balance in the checking account at our last meeting in March was $4,237.73. I have deposited $60 in dues, $225 in books, $390 for the Irish Day sale, and $60 for shirts. Total income for the month was $735. We had no expenses, so the balance of our account as of today is $4,972.73. Our memorial account, our brick account, remains the same, and so does the CD.
And that's one of our old projects nobody's wanting to take a hold of and wrestle, because like I say, we do need to go on with that, and we need to find somebody that will contact the city and see where we can go with it. The sign in Tennessee Ridge. Bob, would you take a minute? And, is it the one in Magnolia?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, as most of you know, the sign in Magnolia, the historical marker, was knocked down. So I got in touch with Mr. Alsworth, and he was the one that made the marker and put it in place. So he knew where it was. I asked him if he would go down and see it. So he went down and picked it up, and he's got it in his place now, and he is in the process of putting metal posts up. I found out later that I understood by Miss Martha Bradley that there was some mailboxes down that area at that time were torn, so I feel like this is vandalism. The sign, the marker itself is not damaged, but I have an idea that vandals knocked it over. But with these steel posts, I don't believe they'll do it. But they broke those 4x4 wooden posts off. So he's in the process of putting it back with metal posts. In the near future, it'll be ready again. So, yeah.
Bob, do we know how much it's going to
I'll let woman with money back there with
Thank you, Bob. Didn't we agree on a set amount? Or no? Okay. Yeah, the money man said he would pay for it. Just make sure they don't put it up at the ridge for me. Think about it.
I also inquired as to if it would be permissible to put it back in the same place by the people who own the property. And it said sure, so that took care of that part.
Did everybody sign in? And did everybody fill out one of these register things that they're going to do a drawing with? They got Clark bars over here. They look pretty good. So they got a basket up here. So if you haven't done one of these, get one and put your name on there and then put it in the basket. Okay, Melissa, would you like to share the floor with me for a minute?
in the basement of the courthouse. We are in our, I don't like these. I know. We are in our third year of operation. We are supported by the county government. They supply us with a budget every year. And we also apply for grants, so we have grant money that comes in. Each meeting I like to give a little update of what's going on since the last meeting. So since our last meeting, we've completed 2 more manuscript collections. They are the Marie Stockard Estate Collection, which was actually part of the big donation of records from the Historical Society. And they include old letters from, I think, a military son that wrote letters to his mother. Mr. L.L. Stockard wrote letters to his mother and father. And there are old vintage greeting cards from Christmas and Easter, which are from the 40s and 50s. So they're very interesting. And they include home demonstration programs and one horse show program. And that is also the collection that we have that has the lock of hair that I have brought before. And so we've completed that collection. It's been processed and we have our finding aid completed. We've not done an index on this collection because it's pretty much mainly Stockard information. The next collection that we've completed is the Hill Orchard Cemetery Association collection. This collection belonged to the library and had been donated by Jim Wyatt to the library. And Miss Kay keeps running out of room. So she handed that collection over to the archives, and we have processed that now, and it is ready for researchers to look at. The Hill Orchard Cemetery is actually an association. They have an association that oversees the cemetery, and it's still working. They still were working today. This includes some minutes from their meetings. This includes listings of who's buried in the cemetery, and it also includes contact and information on people that are associated with the cemetery. So it's great information if you have family members in that cemetery. We continue to work on court records. Miss Ann Sykes, who is one of our faithful volunteers, comes and she's now working. She continues to work on the what they're called UCC records, Uniform Commercial Code records. These particular records are not always archived in our archives. They're usually actually thrown away. But we are actually archiving these because we feel like that they have some genealogy value. Because if you're researching your family and you can't find anything, but you find them in this one collection, then that's a find for you. So we would like to have that for people. On Friday, we got a very special visit. Miss Betty McKinnon called us and asked if her and Bob could bring us something special. And they did, and it was the original plot map from the Oak Hill Cemetery. And it has been rolled up for many, many years. And we unrolled it and looked at it. It's not dated. We're not sure exactly of the date, but it is not on paper. It is actually on some sort of fabric because it has fibers. But it is deteriorated and it has come into some pieces. So it will need some conservation, but we do have this, which is tremendous to still have, because we also understand that all the original records from the cemetery have been destroyed, thrown away over the years. This actually is not a plot map in that who is buried in these plots necessarily, but it's who owns the plots at the time in the beginning, is what we believe. Is that right, Miss Betty? Okay, and so actually the names they're blocked out, and then the names are written in there. So if you have anyone that was buried in Oak Hill Cemetery, which was also called the Erin Cemetery at one time, and you'd like to see this, it's open. We've assured the association, the cemetery group, that it's always going to be available to anyone who would like to see it. We're hoping to mend it at some point and put it in, encapsulate it and conserve it so it'll be here for generations to come. So we thank Miss Betty and Bob for bringing that to us. I'm always preaching, I guess, please, please, please bring us your artifacts and your documents, because first of all, we want to save them because it's history and we've lost a lot of our history, but we also want to keep these things local. You know, there are a lot of people out there collect these kind of things, and that's fine and wonderful, but we'd like for it to stay here locally. Another surprise that we had about I guess it's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Some of you know the courthouse at all. There's a boiler room in the courthouse down in the basement area, and that's where Angie, our custodian, kind of has her little office and her cleaning supplies and things, and that's where the big boiler is. About 3 weeks ago, we had a very heavy rainstorm, and there was some leaking in there, and so she was actually moving some stuff out of the way to put buckets or things down, and she came across this trunk. And she knew it had been there, but she never really paid attention to it. Well, this time when she moved it, the lid moved. And so when she opened the lid, it had old newspapers, old phone books, and things like that. So Mr. Clark, the mayor, said, put it in Melissa's office. And so we got to looking at it, and we found lots of newspapers that were dated 1950s, 1960s. It actually has a March 1963 Tennessean in it that has a photograph and an article of the very first Irish celebration. And it has some old phone books, and those are interesting actually to read about how to make phone calls back when it was just, you call 4 digits, or you had party lines, and so they would instruct you on how to do that. But the very, very interesting things that were in there were 2 items that came from the Erin Theater. Now, from my understanding, we do not have a lot of memorabilia or artifacts from the theater that survive. These are actually original, what I would call movie playbills. They're about this big. One is from 1953, one's from 1958, and they're done like in a month. And then each day it has a picture of what movie was playing on that day. And so to me, these are very rare because these would be something that would have been handed out, and then at the end of the month they would have been thrown away. So we have those, and we're very, very happy to have those. One of the last things I like to say, which is not last because it's unimportant, but it's very important. Miss Leah Baggett is working on our website. We have a website. She is, since I'm not that computer literate, go kissing her myself. I know just enough to get myself in trouble. She is actually working on our website. We hope to have a very beautiful and working website, but yet we want to put a lot of information and at some point digitize records and have them available not only to people here locally, but to people who are from here but don't live here. So that'll be a long process, but she is working on that, and so I don't have the address with me right now, the website address, but I think I have it on my card. But anyway, she's working on that, and she's doing a very good job, so that's all I've got. And don't forget, don't throw your stuff away, bring it to the archives.
What about the basement of the VFW?
I haven't gotten in there yet.
We have a few other things that we're going to present to you tonight. They've been brought to the library, and Kay's got a little bit of information on there, so if you'd share it with us, Kay. One of them's pictures. And I got them over here laid out in case anybody wants to go over and look at them.
This comes under the category of people call you and say, I have these old things and I don't want to throw them away, but I don't know what to do with them. And these pictures, you all remember Miss Patricia Ledbetter? Do you remember her? She was a member of the Historical Society. And it was her sister who now lives in Louisiana. And these were pictures that were probably Miss Cook's, their mothers. And they had been a Busby and a Cook. So these are the ones Jerry's been running on the internet, on Facebook, trying to see if anybody can identify them. And if anybody knows that part of the county, did you ever know the Ledbetters or the Cooks, the Busbys, any of these? These may be the mama's friends and family and things like that, but they're beautiful turn of the century 1900 era pictures. So she gave them to me to give to the Historical Society, who is going to give them to the archives so that they will be preserved. And then William Stevens gave us the plow point that he found with a metal detector on some property that he owns, and it had belonged to Harville Barnes, who is now buried in the Gray Barn Cemetery. And he wanted you all to have it. He now lives in Louisiana. We're getting things from Louisiana, 2 separate. And he didn't want it anymore, but he wanted it to come back to Houston County, so you could have that. And the brick is from Settle, that was a brick maker in Stewart County. And he had gotten that in Montgomery County, and, but he wanted to return it to you all to either keep for your historical society or give to the Stewart County Historical Society.
Miss Betty said that we didn't have no expenditures, but I spent some money today for the Historic Society. I had some more t-shirts made up with different pictures on them. A lot of you remember this as being the Hill Engine. Hillbilly. If you go up to Gary Booker's house, this is where this sits, close to where his house is on the corner of his lot, I believe. It's the old oil well that was in Houston County. And these are the Houston County t-shirts that we were having last week. I don't know what the name of this train is, but this is the train that ran the workers. Is that what it was called? It ran the workers from, and it ran. Is that what it was? It ran where 49 is located now between Tennessee Ridge and Bear Spring. That's why they say the road is bumpy, because the ties are still underneath the road. This is the old bridge that was down in Danville, the temporary trestle bridge that they built that washed out or washed over, and they were building the other bridge on the back side of it. So this is for City McMillan. I got you something for the lower end of the county in Danville.
So hand it to Daddy behind you.
This is when the general came to hearing, and I had two stories that it was 62 or 63. I've heard 63 mostly, but when it was on tour of the South, when they restored it, they brought it to Erin for 50 cents. You could ride it to Danville, but you had to have somebody go down and pick you up because they wasn't coming back. This is an aerial of Erin when the old courthouse still sat there and you had to drive around it. That was the pictures.
They just $5. They just $5.
These just $5? You can look at them for $5. Like the ones we had before, we have the courthouse. I don't have a lot of the different sizes, so if you want to order one of these, I got a form up here. Just bring up, put your name on it, what color you want, and which picture you want, and I'll try to have it by the next meeting. But I did spend some money, so. Well, I guess without further ado, we'll introduce our program. So we're going to introduce CARNEY, WILMA, Joel, Jason, Clark, and they have the Towerview farm, and they do a lot of what I call old-time farming on there. So if you would welcome them to the
We appreciate y'all letting us come. If you get bored, bump your neighbor. I forgot the coffee. If you got anything. It's just a slideshow. It's about 45 minutes, and like you said, we do things the old way, and mules and rocks and stuff the hard way sometimes. If you have a question, feel free to ask. If you want to do it during the program, or if you want to wait till afterwards, either one's fine. There's about 12 seconds for each picture, so you'll have enough time to ask if you need to, or if you want to ask at the end. That's the fire tower that we moved. There'll be a picture of that in a minute. That's their mothers, Mom's mother and Daddy's mother. And that's an old picture we had made for one of our Christmas cards, I think. That's looking from the tower down toward the house. We worked over Mr. Evans, Mr. Hughes all our lives, so we felt it was just right that we had to buy the farm after Mr. Evans passed away. So we've enjoyed having that, and we've added to stuff. A few years ago, the paper did an article on us for all our odd stuff right after we'd gotten the tower. That's the tower. It was standing at Stony Point in Van Leer, and we had a crane pick it up. He laid it down. We strapped 2 trailers, one on each end, and we pulled it in, 70 feet long. And then he came back and set it back up where it is now.
With all the glass intact.
Yeah.
Never broke a pane of glass. 86 panes of glass.
And that's when we set it back up. We decorated, as most of y'all know passing by, that was our Christmas tree one year. That was the log cabin built in 1935 where the people that ran the fire tower lived. And we moved it all together. The logs are chestnut. We do a couple of parties each year. A lot of y'all have been. If you want to come, leave your address and we'll send you an invitation. Be glad to have you. We cooked 3 cases of chicken for the 4th of July.
Is that an old log in the pool garden?
Ma'am,
Was that an old log or a tree stump in the pool garden?
it was a log that was hollowed out. A man used to feed his cows in it. And one time we put drinks in it for one of the parties.
Aunt Martha.
In the fall, we do 25 gallons of chili. Cook it in a wash kettle. We always have a band in the fall. That's Mr. G.R. Street. He's with us tonight.
That was his band, and
And
last,
bass fiddle.
yeah. Last couple of years, we've had the Ward family. And this is the Mules. Daddy still cuts timber, and he does all his snaking the logs with his mules.
Is that the only two working units?
Yes, ma'am. He just has two. Mr. Bateman come out and made these pictures. They went back there and cut the logs and loaded them on the wagon and snaked them out, loaded them on the wagon. They're taking them back to the sawmill.
I came with him, and I
Yeah.
was amazed that he made those mules do everything just with voice commands. I mean, he just, I wish you could see.
Is that the cedar tree?
That's cedar.
That's what I thought.
How old are they? The red one's 5 and the black one is 14.
Just 5 in March.
That's under the shed at one of the sawmills.
Okay. We worked hard today.
The mules do tricks too. That one's standing up on the log. And that one's walking the log.
That's good, they get to play after they worked hard. Yeah. Do a little playtime. Real talented.
He rode one, that's an older mule that had died. He rode him in one of the Irish parades several years ago. That was an old horse, his first horse he had, he snaked logs with.
How big was that,
How
Joe?
big was it?
50-something inches.
50-something inches, he thought.
7 inches, I think.
That's the stump.
Wow.
What kind of tree was it? Red oak. That's another one.
Oh, my goodness.
Did they pull the log? Too much for them.
With those small things, how did they get it up on the trailer?
One that big, you have to roll up,
Put up 2 poles and roll it up.
put skids up and roll it up.
I'd hate to be the one doing the rolling.
That's the first load of cross ties. We saw it on my mill, I guess, wasn't it?
Is that what he usually does, makes cross ties?
We do a lot of custom sawing there on the place. He hauls, most of what he cuts, he hauls to Eldon Smith out here to sell. We custom saw a lot of cedar and a lot of custom bills there on our mills.
That's the other sawmill. That one's a little bit bigger. It'll cut longer stuff.
We have cut some 27-foot timbers on that, pieces, 2 of 12s, wasn't it? 27 foot long. That's a pretty good size mill. It's got a 60-inch saw on it. It'll cut a pretty good size log.
We run them off a tractor. That one runs off a belt. The other one runs directly off the power takeoff. They're both run by tractor.
That pulls with an M.
And we may sark them. That's growing in the field.
How much do you grow?
We had about half acre
Half
or
acre.
something of cane on the ground. We cooked 3 cookings this past year. Made about
what did we cook down?
About 30 gallons.
We cooked down about, we wound up with about 30 gallons, started out with about 240 gallons of juice, something like that. It'll cook down about 30 gallons.
That's the sorghum meal that you feed it in, you'll see in just a minute, and grind out the juice. Gets all done by hand and mules pull the meal.
Is that something, isn't that just about like you do sugar cane?
Yes, ma'am, it's similar.
Because I've
Similar
seen
the way
them
they,
do- I've watched them do sugar cane.
The mule just goes around and around and turns it, pulls the cane through 2 or 3 wheels and press the juice out of it. That's GR Street over here, feeding cane in the mill. That's the cane patch there on the left, just right beside the mill there.
How do you know when it's ready to harvest?
Usually by the amount of time it grows, you have to cut it when it's still green, so it's got the good juice in it. And we usually just time it from about the time we put it out. We try to make it on Labor Day, the first cooking, or the
First
weekend
one's
of
usually on Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Or Labor Day weekend. Takes about 4 months for it to grow and get ready.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see it like
Usually by that weekend, we make it the first
First
time.
weekend in September. Be glad for you to come out.
set up bleachers.
There's usually a crowd there.
What do you do with the cane after it's spent?
We'll give it to the cows, or the horses eat some, we just have to haul it, and we just dump it in the field, and they'll eat it.
That's the 240 gallon we start with. It takes about 4 hours to cook it.
Well, that's about 80, that's one cook.
That's 8, yeah. 80 gallons at a time. Takes about 4 hours to cook it down, stirring it constantly.
We do it a little different than they used to. We come up with a method, we cook it in an open pan, we don't cook it in a running pan. If you've ever been around sorghum, most people cook it in a running pan. We cook it a little different, we cook it in an open pan. I made the pans out of stainless, so everything's in stainless steel.
That fire underneath looks pretty hot.
It is pretty hot.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to stir it constantly and skim, you know, the skimmings off the top of it. The foam looking, yes ma'am.
That's right after it come off the fire, we pull it out of a valve out the bottom and start jarring it.
What's the difference in sorghum and molasses?
Molasses usually has something else added to it. Molasses has either sugar cane or Cairo syrup or something when they make it. They add that to it, and that's when they call it molasses. Pure sorghum is just what we have, just the juice cooked down.
We put something in it,
It becomes molasses when they add something to it.
We kill hogs, and there's one, he's in line.
I think that's Daddy and Ronnie Legan.
Uh-huh. Of course, when you shoot them, you have to cut their throat so they'll bleed.
That's Ada's husband over here.
You have to let them bleed, get the blood out.
Do they hang them to get the blood out or just?
We don't hang them beforehand, they'll bleed out right there, and then we scald them afterwards. You can see he's about
Then
ready.
we'll hang them afterwards, and then a lot of y'all know it. It may be too much for some of you. I mean, we're used to it, like I said, but
So my granddad used to cut steaks.
he's laid there long enough, so he's put him in the bucket, and we're going to take him over to the scalder now, and put him in the hot water and scrape the hair off of him.
They're hung after they're scalded.
After the scald. That's the hog scalder there, just full of hot water where they'll go off in. Get the hair to where to pull off.
How hot's that water?
About 100.
135 is the best temperature.
I was gonna say, not hot enough, it's gonna cook the skin, just hot enough.
Right, if you get it too hot, it'll set the hair and cook the skin, so
I was wondering.
you have to, that's daddy checking it.
Yeah.
It's right when you can dip your finger through it about 3 times.
Really? On the third time, you know it's ready or not.
Yeah.
Fingernail comes off.
That's
And that was a little hot, so they gotta cool it down.
Oh, we heat it
It's
with
wood.
We heat it
It's
with
wood fire.
They just added some cold water.
Yeah, that's Ronnie Legan, our neighbor, Ada's husband. They're always good to help us. All the neighbors are good to help us do everything. We couldn't do it without the neighbors.
The hog's in there now. They've got chains under him to move him up and down, turn him.
Roll him back and forth.
There's a whole lot to do.
There he is. It's a 2-day job, a full 2-day job.
Used to, the weather had to be real cold.
Well, if we keep it depends on what we're doing. We make sausage to sell, and if we're just making sausage to sell, we can kill them and grind them up. They don't have, it don't have to be real cold. But if you're going to preserve the hams, to put in the smokehouse and the salt, then you want it cold.
It was cold that day.
But how many hogs do y'all normally do?
We'll kill sometimes 25 to 30, I guess. What did we sell this year? Probably close to 2,000 pounds of sausage.
About 1,800.
1,800 pounds of sausage
So
since
far.
we started the 1st of November,
We've still got one more to kill.
and we just sold out, and we're going to kill, I think, one more pretty soon. And that's not counting our sausage that we kill and keep for ourselves.
He's getting him ready to hang. You cut the leaders and tendons in the back of his leg and put that bar in it, and then you hang him up.
Is that hanging, scraping the hair off? They're already scraped.
They're already scraped. He may have to finish up a little bit, but they're already scraped. He'll hang them up, and then he'll...
To dry.
Once they're hung, we wash them and get it all clean. For the final cleaning like that, you can see how white he is there. Everything's clean and washed off.
What's that, about 300-pound hog?
That was probably 3 and a quarter, somewhere along in there is where we usually try to keep them at. They can get too big.
Do you feed them certain feeds at the end of corn?
just corn.
We won't kill one unless he's been on corn at least solid for 3 or 4 weeks to make sure he hadn't got any chemicals or stuff from the pellets in them. So we put them on straight corn, even if we don't have them and we bring them in, we put them on straight corn. Won't kill them until we know their system's clean.
I think he was cutting the head
Cutting
off,
the head
I
off
think.
that one, yeah. Heads are all thin, they're ready to go to the meat room.
You take that sausage and make brains and ears and
No, ma'am. Some people like it. We don't do the South.
We usually give everything away but the best parts. That's what we make the sausage out of.
We don't do the South. That's Daddy's little .22 rifle. I think he's had since, what, you were 7? His daddy bought it for him when he was 7 years old.
That's hog hair around the knife. That's a set of telephone bells standing up there that our granddaddy made to scrape hair with. Out of an old telephone, he sharpened them, and you can take them and scrape the hair off the hog
You
with
got
it.
the handle in the middle and you scrape. He was always making something odd. Yeah, that's Carney. That's the sausage sacker. After we get the meat cut up and ground up, that's what we use to put it in the sacks. It's actually a
Cider press.
cider press. So y'all were asking about the log in the other picture. That's a hewn out log that we use for a salt box. Sycamore? What elm? Elm.
Elm.
It's an elm tree that's been hewn out.
That's it. Put the meat in it, then cover it in salt and leave it till it comes out ready to be smoked.
how long does that take?
Usually leave it in there about 6
About
weeks.
6.
Depends on the weather, but usually around 6 weeks. That's hams
He
and
hangs
smokehouse.
his hams upside down, like they walk, so that as it drains, it comes out the hock instead of going back into the meat.
They're upside down from what you usually see in the grocery store. But all the drainage actually runs out where the foot was cut off rather than going down into the ham. That's bacon on the left. That's smoke in the smokehouse. We build it up, smother it out with dust, and it'll smoke the meat.
And that's one sausage making.
we keep our sausage fresh as people buy them, so we don't make them all at one time. That was, what, about 100 sacks, probably 90 or 100 sacks, usually about what we make at a time.
He's got all kinds of old antique farm machinery, plows and new ground plow. An old corn planter.
That's to make little feed for your little chickens. Crack up the corn.
The one with the wheel, it's got the plow point in the back and the wheel that you push.
What is that?
Ox plow. That's a hillside plow.
It turns the dirt to the left. It's a hillside. Slant wing turning plow. It's left-handed.
What kind is that, Joe?
It's a left-handed turning plow. And he found a rock that he thought looked like a plow, so he made it completely look like a plow. That's what they used to clean out the ponds with the mules.
That's for putting 4 mules to a 3 mules to a implement, whatever you're pulling.
He made them.
That's to pull logs with. That's what you snake your logs with behind the mule.
He took an old wagon that had come apart, been left for many years, and he's rebuilt it. He's putting it back together, and that's what he started with.
It's what they raised up wagons to change the tires on the old steel-tired wagons and the old wagons. Before sledgehammers was abound, that's what they drove posts with. It's a swelled-ended tree, basically.
It's a tractor with no steering wheel. You steer it with a lever.
What year is that?
What, you know what year it is?
No, 24, 50.
between 48 and 50, 1948 and 1950.
No, sure.
They're kinda odd, they're a Gibson.
It runs, you can drive it, you can steer it with a lever.
It's a walk-behind tractor, he's got 2 or 3 of them he messes with. Little implements that go on them. That coal pick, where'd that come from, GR?
I'm just telling her, I don't remember where I got it.
You got it somewhere for
I
us.
think I got it up at Wendy's store.
I think you
I
did.
think so.
Forge for blacksmithing. That's an old side saddle that the ladies used to ride.
Those pictures ever come to your farm that's on the History Channel, they'd have a fit.
They'd have a heyday.
They would have a fit.
That's an antique centrifuge is what that was. That's a wheel bender to bend the iron to go on the outside of a steel-tired wagon wheel to make it the circle.
I've seen iron benders, but I never saw one look.
That's a tie hammer. It's got a letter in the end of it. It's what they mark cross ties with. The owner had his initial. It had an A in the end of it, so he'd stamp it with an A. And there's where he stamped the end of a piece of wood with the hammer.
Now they just mark them.
Mm-hmm. You got a fro over here, hadn't you?
Yeah,
What they
there's
cut
one
out,
over here on the table.
what they cut out shingles and shakes with. It's a little hand grinder. It's belonged to our granddaddy. It's pretty old.
Is that one of the ones that they made out of wood and split?
He
He
did.
did, he made it out of the wood and split it.
Bush hooks and sorghum knives. There's one sorghum knife that GR made so you can stand up straight and cut the sorghum off the ground.
The wheat cradle's on the left of the pitchfork. It's hard to see there.
What's a wool separator?
I don't know exactly what it.
It's a
It's a
sock,
sock
yeah,
bar.
it's
Sock
They made socks some way with it.
Had
They
needles in it. The
And
needles
needles
gone.
that come up in those grooves.
they put the thread around it, the wool around it, and make socks.
That's, go ahead.
Steel-tired wagon wheels. That's the iron bands there. I guess we got some in there showing. We put the bands back on them. That's a little thing that measures the diameter of your wheel. You roll it around the wheel at first, and then you roll it around your iron and cut it the right length so you can heat the iron and then put it on the wheel.
They're gonna put the steel band around the spokes of the wooden wheel.
That's a wheel there that hadn't even got the wood around it yet. Just the spokes and the hub. We just have to build a big fire and get it hot. That's a wheel laying in that. That's the iron wagon wheel laying down in the coals there getting hot. You have to get them cherry red and they expand. That's the wheel laying there without the band on it. Band's heating. You have to cut the wheel small so it won't go on it when it's cold, and then you heat it and the wheel expands. You have to put it on it. That's what we're doing there. We've dropped the hot wheel over on the wooden wheel, the steel over on it. It's hot. Once it goes down on it, then you have to start throwing water to it to keep it from burning it.
and it'll shrink up and fit right around the wood.
And that measure that you had in that other picture, that allows for the difference between the wood wheel and the hot?
It don't allow, it just gives us the measurement, and then we have to cut the steel wheel a little smaller, and then weld the steel wheel together. And it'll be about a quarter of an inch smaller than the wood wheel.
It almost got dark. It takes a while to do it.
You can see the steam coming off the steel part there. We're putting the water to it, cool it down. It's a little steel-tired goat wagon. That's a power hay baler. They set them stationary in the field, and you had to bring the hay to the baler. That's one that pulls off a flat belt. He brought that in here a while back. You can see a tree growed up through it there, and that's where he redid it. After he cut the tree out, he had probably a 20-inch tree growing up through it. He had to cut it off, bring tree and all in, and then bust it out, and then he completely reworked it.
That's the one they tie with wire. Tie the bales with wire.
The square ones?
Yes, ma'am.
That looks like a hay baler.
The baler sets, like saying, stationary, and you have to bring the hay to the baler, and rather than running it over it. We did come to the conclusion we're not going to start using it. We're going to stick to the newer pipe balers we've got there.
And then he wanted to put the original steel wheels back on it.
That's a mule hay mower. No man. That's another mule hay mower he's got, and he mows some with it. He has when we. Mule cultivator, riding cultivator. You ride on it, plow your crops. He makes these bowls. He's got some over here on the table. He cuts bowls out of all kinds of odd pieces of wood he finds and cuts off in the woods. That's some he's made.
That's another chainsaw.
He starts it with a chainsaw. Takes a block of wood and does most of it with a chainsaw, and then finishes it up with a little sander, but most of it's just with a power saw.
They use that down at Cedar Valley. That's a manger and a chair. They use it for the Christmas program usually every year that he cut out. And that's the donkey. They pull up the aisle, made out of a stump.
And Charles Harvey made the head for it.
It's a cabin we've got there on the place. We built to make. It is old, no electricity, water's outside with a hand pump. We started on it or finished it, I guess, in '94.
We cut the logs off the place and sawed the lumber and built it out of the lumber off the logs.
Inside solid poplar. See the table?
And
rent it out.
Several have stayed in it.
There's a lot of people
A
staying
lot
in it.
stayed in it.
If you ever want to come rough it, come on. We'll put you back there. That's
Where's the
inside.
outhouse?
That's inside.
It's out there. Hang on.
Not too far.
It's not too far out.
That's a hanging coal oil lamp. We like to never found one of them. It actually adjusts up and down, hanging there to the right.
We got that table from Ashley and Susan Wiltshire. Came from Texas. She called it the Sam Houston table. That's one of the bedrooms in the cabin. And that's the other bedroom. There's two bedrooms downstairs, and there's a little loft, like the Little House on the Prairie house upstairs. There's a bed upstairs, too.
I like the cloth hanging over the doors.
That's a fireplace we built that we got from rocks. We hauled rocks for weeks there off the place, found good square rock. We built an outdoor fireplace. Didn't really have anywhere to build it inside, so.
It's back at the cabin, and there's the outhouse.
No lights, no fun.
One-seater or two-seater?
It's a two.
It's a two-hole.
And it's functional, huh?
Yes.
We've got Jacob sheep that we've had, what, 4 or 5 years?
Ever since we bought the
Since
Dixon
we bought
place,
this,
we
yeah, the
put
Dixon
sheep
place.
over there when we bought it. We've got a big flock of Jacob sheep.
They're Jacob sheep because they have 4 horns.
See his horn, 2 horns come out the side of his head and 2 out the top.
That's the one Jacob had in the Bible. When they separated the flocks,
Far East.
Jacob's had 4 horns.
They originated in the Middle East. And
And we have the babies. That's the babies that was born this year. I think we got 16 or 19.
16, I think, over
16
right now.
babies.
16 little ones.
We'll sell them. They buy them for me. We don't. We share them.
We do have to shear the sheep. Well, I don't think there's any pictures of shearing. We keep bottle calves over there, but we have to shear them. Actually, I sheared them one time, and that was enough.
We get a professional.
I've got a boy that comes through now. He's a traveling sheep shearer, comes from Michigan, and shears them. He called me last week, and he's
That barn was moved from up on Salmon's Branch. He cut it to just the middle part, cut it down the middle, and moved it in 2 pieces and put it back and built the sheds on it.
that's a chicken catcher. Got a hook on it.
Yeah.
It's old. That belonged to Buck Parchman.
It's got a hook on the end if you see it at the top.
That's a picture of 2 of our old farm halls made out. That's made out in the big middle of the big field over at Miss Mary Evelyn's.
Looking down Ellis Mills Road. The good pictures were made by Mr. and Miss Bateman and Darrell and Kathy Baker and G.R. Street. The ones you couldn't see, I probably did. We appreciate y'all letting us come over. We've got some... Yeah, we've got these door prizes when y'all get ready. We've got some snacks over here. We've got popcorn balls that Mom made out of the sorghum that we grew. We've got sausage balls that were made out of the sausage we made. And I've got oatmeal cookies that has sorghum in them.
There's also, we make lye soap. There's lye soap over here. She sells the fire out of lye soap out there all the time. We've got sorghum over here too. So.
They will. They will.
The rams have more distinct horns than the ewes. The little ewes, a lot of times, their horns don't grow long. Even our old ewes. The ram was the one that had the big
The boys have better horns.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McMillan?
You working in that tire town? You were.
Oh, yeah, when I was
Oh, did you work in it?
18 and 19,
Did you?
I was a crew member. My dad was the crew leader for 20 years.
Okay.
And I climbed it first in
I'd like to thank the
1949.
Clark family for being here with us and showing us
6 years old.
Every time I
the
pass
way of
by,
life.
Oh, yeah.
y'all
I
have
also
it.
got a
I get to
program
see
note
it.
for the next month.
Took me
The
half a
program's
day.
been changed from the 14th to the 17th, and it's going to be at Allen and Campbell's house, and we request that if you come out, bring a covered dish and bring you a lawn chair with you because it's going to be an outside event. And also, we're going to have Otis Kelly there to do a beekeeping program for us. And if anybody has any issues where the place is, just visit the Clark's farm because they live right across the street. But it's out Dixon Highway. You go out to
I'll put the directions in.
yeah,
Go to the
right-
second road on the right past the fire tower.
Right. And it's always a nice time out there.
Third road to the right.
Third road on the right past the fire
Where the road wide opens up, it's the road right there on the right.
At the church.
Yeah.
We got some over here.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to add to the program before we close?
We'll do the door prizes when y'all are ready, whatever.
All right. And we'll do the door prizes now. If you'd like to.
You wanna draw them and we'll. I guess, we've got 2 or 3 things. This is something that Daddy had made here a while back. It's wagon spokes, and it's a section of a wagon wheel, actually, with the 2 little spokes. We made it into a salt and pepper shaker, napkin holder.
Betty
We'll get
Sykes.
Betty
Betty Sykes.
Betty Sykes. We're gonna give away a couple of jars of sorghum. We do have some to sell over here. We'll give away a couple of little jars.
Scotty Booker.
Pass it across. We'll give away another jar of sorghum.
You're okay. I'm staying back here.
Francis Harvey.
We're gonna give away one of these. We've got a couple over here. This is GR's patent, and I hate to tell him that I stole his patent and I made a couple of them. GR sold probably, what, how many of these did you sell 2 years ago, or last year? 300 last year. It's a carpenter bee trap.
And they'll
If you've got
catch
any
'em.
problem
They'll
They
catch
work.
with the big old black carpenter bees eating up stuff,
They'll catch 'em.
I've got some over at the house that he made, and we'd dump out, what, 80 and 90 at the time in a big jar like this, a big water bottle. Over a course of a couple of days, you'll have anywhere from 80 to 100 in a bottle. So it'll relieve you of your...
Yesterday was the first day I'd seen him flying at the house. Daddy went up there and looked at the woodshed before we left, and that bottle is just working his carpenter.
So they've already in our traps that we've got out, but this is one that I made, there's one here that GR made, but he gets the credit for the patent of the big traps.
Peggy Breed.
Peggy Breed. I know it's not as good as yours.
They were just working in.
This is another section of old wagon wheel from back in probably the early 1900s. It's a steel-tired wagon wheel, a little section and a spoke, and we turned it into a lamp, so we're going to give that away. Ada? Is that Ada legal? Ada legal? There.
Who?
And last but not least, we didn't make them, but we think they're pretty special. We're going to give away a few Clark.
They got the right name on them anyway.
Susan Whitaker.
Susan Wilshire?
Or Wilson. Yeah.
All right. We got 2 more.
Cecil Sykes.
Cecil Sykes?
See if I can find my name. Gary Patterson.
Gary Patterson. All right.
Oh, like y'all, is it Larry or Gary?
Is it Larry or Gary?
Gary and Diana Patterson.
Gary Dyer. All right.
They get close. Gary, down the.
Thank you very much.
Did you give away bar soap?
No, we didn't. Hang on. Give away a
One
little
more.
Lysol. Yeah,
One
give
more.
a couple more.
One more chance.
Give a couple more. We meant to give that away. A couple bars of Lysol. We didn't have it all laid out.
Elizabeth Martin.
One more.
That's what the Lord High Mayor needs.
Clean this city up, girl.
Sandra Lee. Thank y'all. I appreciate seeing y'all.
Yeah, get your snack if you want. It's free.
Y'all help yourself over here to your snacks.
And you look at your bowls and pictures and stuff.